Big spring debut from the big rig. Are we dreaming big about that? And is this the best group of position player prospects the Guardians have ever had? We'll debate that and who has the best tools on today's Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bagby, the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome on to another episode of Locked On Guardians. Thank you for making us your first listen today and every day wherever you get podcasts. We are free everywhere. We're covering your Guardians 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's Locked On Guardians, we'll give you updates from spring training day 5 for the Guardians. We'll talk about Gavin Williams' big spring debut and if we should be thinking big from that. And Jeff and I are going to do a draft of the best position player tools among prospects in the Guardian system. So we'll talk about those tools and if this is the best position player group the Guardians have had as prospects in quite some time. I'm Justin Ladd. I'm your host here, your co-host. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. Formerly editor-in-chief of Guardians Baseball Insider, currently the News Herald, the Morning Journal, Prospects Live, next year in Cleveland.substack.com, and I've seen many of a position player group prospect, group of position player prospect from the Guardians, and I do think this is the best they've had in quite some time, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm a big fan as well, as you'll find out when we do our draft later on. I am Jeff Ellis. Before this, I was a nationally recognized scout, writer at Scouting 24/7, focused on prospects and the draft, as well as an everyday cat enjoyer. I still find it very funny when people use cat as an insult for me. Like, cats make the internet go. Like, if we can get more cat traffic, that's good. Thank you to everyone out there. As a quick side note before we get into it today, we crossed 4,000 on YouTube, so we appreciate that. So thank you. Just honestly, we put a lot of time and effort in. Justin covered for me when I was ill and had everything else going on. I'm still fighting through some of the illness. So yeah, we're always grinding. That's you can say a lot of things about us, but we are always grinding over here. So thank you.
Yep, here 5 days a week talking Guardians, hoping it is interesting for you. Yeah, thanks for 4K. I will say, outside of my wife coming home and spending time with her in the evening after she gets home from teaching, this is the best half hour of my day. I enjoy talking baseball and I enjoy connecting with our community, both here, texting with our insiders. I really enjoy the community we've created here, and I hope you all enjoy it too. We enjoy you. All right, let's get into spring training updates from day 5 for the Cleveland Guardians. So the big storyline from today's game, from Wednesday's
Jose
game,
Devers. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean that's to be fair. We barely mentioned Travis Bazzana's home run the other day. It was a nice home run, even though it was off a guy that was a 22-year-old A-baller, which he should be able to hit those guys. Devers did hit a big home run today. That was good for him.
I will say, he hit it off. He's a righty, and he hit it off a loogie, and
I mean, Hobie Milner is a major league pitcher.
He's
been in the majors before, so that's not that's good. And he hit it hard. So
yeah, no, he hit the smack out of that one. That was a hard hit ball.
Yeah, it was 106 off the bat. I mean, 432. It carries in Arizona, but it's at 106 off the bat. That's good exit velocity. And Jose Devers is not a big guy, so for him to create that exit velocity is good. But the big story from this one was Gavin Williams' big debut this spring. 2 innings, 3 strikeouts, 34 pitches. Velocity topping out at 98, consistently 97, 98. Great sign for Gavin Williams in his first start. Appeared to be able to find the strike zone just fine. A lot of comments after his start just talking about comfort in his elbow, and he lost some weight, and he's fixing some mechanics and stuff like that. And Vogt said before the game that a lot of the stuff last year after being hurt, he had a hard time getting his fastball shaped the way he wanted it. The velocity wasn't consistently there. He was just kind of behind the 8 ball all year.
Was it the curve he abandoned? The first year, the
slider.
Curve?
Well,
slider.
The slider was turned into a cutter, but he said the cutter was a slider, and there was like a pitch classification issue. So
I don't know. But his first year it was dynamite. His second year, according to the classification, he didn't throw it at all. So
yeah,
if he did throw it, then it was no longer dynamite. So then it kind of changed.
Well, there was the whole thing about how whether or not he wasn't throwing it because of his elbow, because it hurt his elbow, and then he changed the grip, and then it turned into a cutter. But he said it was supposed to be the slider. I don't know. It was a whole mess of explanations on that. So today, no cutters, all fastballs, sliders, a couple curves, 1 changeup. That I don't know if it was a changeup. We'll see. The classification could change. I don't even know if this will take a shape on Savant, because They don't track spring training data on player pages officially. It's just what you can see through game day. But everything else, it'll look good there. A lot of good vertical break on the fastball. He got up to 19 inches of ride on the fastball, so that's what you want to see from him. All signs point to him being healthy, which begs the question, what does ace level production look like from Gavin Williams, and what does that do for the Guardians if he turns into the guy who becomes the frontline starter? Because, you're talking about a guy with a big fastball who he said he couldn't get the fastball right in 2024. 2023, it was a great pitch for him. The slider was great. The curveball was great. I mean, this is a guy I think that could be easily their second best starter, if not challenge Tanner to be their top starter in the first half. Those two guys they have the potential to be co-aces. Gavin's always going to have maybe some inelegant control, but the stuff is so good. If he's healthy all year, I think he could very much be a legitimate number 2 in this rotation. And man, if you get ace-like production from, let's not even say ace, let's just say if you get top 10 starter in the American League for Tanner. We talked yesterday about, whether or not he could Cy Young votes this year. And we said, maybe anywhere between 6 and 10 on the Cy Young list this year. If you can get that level of production from Tanner Bybee and you can get Gavin Williams close to that range behind him for an entire season, man, your rotation's in fantastic shape because you've got a plethora of options behind there that I think will fill in just fine. And I think that makes the rotation really dangerous. They just got to find a way to score some runs, which has nothing to do with pitching. But having better starting pitching will definitely be nicer in 2025.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's amazing to think about the starting pitching from a year ago. I know I keep harping on that, but it was bad. There's no way around it. Starting pitching was bad a year ago, and they have so many options. And that's the other thing too. It's Gavin Williams, I think you and we both ended up with Tanner being the higher rated prospect, but that was because of health. He was safer. But I think if we were going pure ceiling, we probably would have both had Gavin ahead of Tanner at the time. At least kind of together.
I always thought that Gavin, the only reason, health, yes, but Tanner always had better control and had the more complete arsenal.
But they were close.
Gavin was fastball heavy.
Yeah, but they were at least close. And that's the thing. It's if Gavin can kind of get back to where he was, if he can even get close to Tanner, it's like you talked about. We talked about McKenzie yesterday. We talked about what happens when Bieber comes back. There's so many pathways. This rotation was a disaster in the postseason. Let's be honest. It was a disaster in the regular season. The rotation was a disaster all year long. And we're talking about 3 or 4 pitchers who have a legitimate way to be in the top 5 to 15 in the American League. They have multiple guys you can legitimately point to how that could happen. And maybe it happens for none of them. But if it happens for one, if it happens for all, everyone talks about, look at the improvements these other teams made. If Cleveland runs out there with Tanner with another year of improvement, a Bieber bounce back, a McKenzie bounce back, and a Williams bounce back, no one's going to want to face that either. There is and that's kind of, they added depth in case things go wrong, but they also have, I know a lot of people comment about Wyandotte bats. The reason they didn't do, they didn't want to block anyone. They believe in Chase, they believe in Brito, and we'll have to see how that goes. That's a debate for another day, but they've given themselves a lot of pathways, a lot of outs, a lot of ways to be successful, which a year ago they just didn't have. They didn't have that many approaches. They kind of had to, they had to rely on the bullpen, which was basically one of the greatest bullpens that in the regular season that has ever existed a year ago. And this year they've given themselves more ways for the lineup to be successful, for the starting pitching to be successful. There's pathways for this team to be much better than a year ago. There's pathways for it to be much worse as well. That's the downside to it. But on a positive way, this bullpen or the starting rotation was bottom 5 in baseball last year. There's a world where it ends this year.
It was bottom 6. It was bottom 6. We said yesterday we're 24th in innings pitch in 2024. So I'm being pedantic.
I don't know if innings pitch is going to be what I use to evaluate a rotation.
Okay, they were 26th in ERA.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if I'm going to say it could be a top 5 rotation by the end of the year, but I think they could have a top 10 rotation by the end of the year if things break right, which is a huge improvement to go from bottom 5 to top 10.
I think the question is, I think obviously Tanner's going to be Tanner. We think, and
he's the only
if Ga-
person I'm like writing in pen, and I feel 100% confident in.
well,
That's it.
obviously, I think that's a given. Like you said, there's a lot of upside to be had here. Like whatever they do with Luis Ortiz, whatever they do with Slade Ciccone, like we talked about on Wednesday show. But yeah, if Gavin Williams comes back and this is like a healthy Gavin Williams, the production we saw on his first spring training start, if he can push that into a full season, and you get Bieber back by August, man, that's a great front three. Means we'll see because it's the second Tommy John, so I really don't know.
Complete
But
wild
I think
card.
I think the question is like who emerges in this rotation? Like I think Gavin Williams is super important to this team because in order for Bieber to come back and be impactful and be part of a postseason rotation, they're going to have to win some close games. We don't know how the offense is going to look. It might be, it's questionable for sure. It's questionable. So, but the rotation is going to have to be good. They're going to have to win a lot of 3-2 games. So you need Gavin Williams to be this version of himself alongside Tanner. And you also need them to be that good until Bieber gets back because you want to have a chance for Bieber to make an impact and become a playoff team. And like you said, because if you do get to the playoffs, I can't believe we're talking about this on February 27th, but
Playoffs.
but I mean, a playoff series of Shane Bieber, a healthy Shane Bieber, Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams, who looks like this, that's a really fun three-headed monster rotation in the playoffs. And it doesn't even include like what Luis Ortiz is going to look like and what Slade Ciccone or Joey Cantillo or Tristan McKenzie or Logan Allen can look like. I mean, and you might not even need two of those guys in the end of the year. And they're still Ben Lively, right? But they're going to need Gavin Williams to be this good, to remain competitive until Bieber comes back and let him get his feet under him and hope he's healthy and the Shane Bieber of old, in order for him to come back and make that playoff impact. So I think Gavin Williams is actually really critically important to this team, and I think you can dream big. It's a lot of ifs. All right, real quickly before we move on to the position player prospect draft tools. Franco Alaman is slated to have surgery on I'm going to butcher the name, inguinal hernia. It's not a sports hernia. It's a different, I don't know. It's a normal hernia, whatever you call that. So he supposedly had surgery on the 26th on Wednesday. There'll be updates after that, but it's going to set him back for at least several weeks. So we'll see. And then Chase DeLauter. I'm really confused here on the wording of the Guardians here. So he hasn't appeared on any medical updates. Like they give out the medical update on the game notes every day. He's not on there. Chris Antonetti talked to reporters on Tuesday after Larry Dolan's passing and, answered some questions too. And they talked about when would Chase DeLauter play. And they said they're hopeful that he'll be in the game in the next week. And that didn't really specify like if it'd be this week, if it'd be next week. And, then they said, well, we're not building towards a specific timeline. He's doing baseball activities, but we're not building toward a specific timeline, opening day or whatever, like an arbitrary headline or date. It was about building him up and taking their cues from the medical team and Chase and building him up so he could have a full, healthy, productive season. All that wording to me sounds like things are vague. Like he's maybe not 100% right now. I'm not saying he is or isn't because the wording we got out of that, I don't have any other additional information to give you, unfortunately, but the wording from that is extremely vague. And that's what I'm taking away from that statement. I don't know. That's all I got.
Yeah. I mean, it's always health is always a concern there, right? Like, that's just unfortunate.
It is.
Until he proves otherwise, it's going to be the fixation there.
Yeah, you can't pay attention too much to their words when they're also sort of vague like that. It's also very confusing. So
when it's a word jumble.
Yeah, it was word salad for sure. And as far as extensions go, people have been asked about extensions. I know. I think there probably will be a pause for like a short period of time just because of the family death of the Dolans for Larry. But it sounds like there are extension talks happening. I don't know any specific players, but it sounds like there are extension talks that are happening like they do every spring, whether or not they come to fruition. But it sounds like they're at least attempting to make some, and they might resume shortly after they, mourn the death of Larry Dolan. So, all right, Jeff and I are going to draft individual player tools from the position player group. We'll talk about whether or not this is the best position player prospect group we've seen in our time covering the Guardians minor league system. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. once again, want to say that thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today, everywhere you get podcasts. We are covering the Guardians 5 days a week, sometimes more even. And we'd love it. We're at 4K on YouTube. We'd love it if you became an insider too. We've had great conversations all day today about what happened during today's game, about Chase DeLauter, about extensions, about any news we're hearing, who's going to play in spring training games. And we're also doing some bonus content, some written content, some extra episodes. So if you would like to be a part of that group, a part of the community, and also get some bonus content from us, if you really enjoy us, become an insider. The link is on your screen. It's also in the show description. We would love to have you and give you some additional content too with our time. All right, now that's out of the way, let's talk about this. So last year, Jeff and I did this experiment where we drafted individual position player and we did pitcher too. Prospect tools. So this is like the tools, think of hit tool, power, speed, defense, arm, and then we did intangibles last year. So we're drafting individual tools. We're looking to see who can build the best player, but we're also just kind of using it as a way to like talk about who stands out in the farm system with these tools. So we're going to use that as a debate. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm pulling up on the screen now what we came back with last year in the draft. So Jeff took Juan Brito's hit tool. He had Ralphie's power, Khalil Watson's speed, Petey Halpin's glove, Jason Churio's arm, and then intangibles from Cody Huff. I took Kyle Manzardo's hit tool, George Valera's patience, and Chase DeLauter's power, Nate Furman's speed, who's no longer with the Guardians, Brian Rocchio's glove, which that was up and down in the postseason. Jonathan Rodriguez's arm, who that still remains, and then I took Joe Donovan's intangibles, who later retired to become a coach at the University of Michigan. So I'm giving myself
apparently is a kiss of death. He, two of his guys are gone, and a third almost was. So like 3 of these guys were no longer with the organization.
And I took the 2 most injury-prone players in the organization too. So hope to be better this year. All right, we did a little
do better, wheel. Justin. Do better. I'm kidding.
I don't know if I have it in me. All right, we spun the wheel of doom before this, so
and Justin won. Big surprise. I'm kidding.
I won, so whoever I pick here is screwed. Sorry, I'm sorry to ruin your season with the wheel of death that I didn't even design myself. I just went to a website and spun it. All right. With that being said, I think this is an obvious one, but Travis Pisana's hit tool, right? This has got to be the most obvious tool in the system. I think it's the best tool in the entire system because we know he makes contact at a high rate. He's very patient. We bake patience and plate discipline into the hit tool because what good is your ability to hit the ball if you like John Kenson well, like contact's not like a huge issue for him in zone, but it's chasing. So you got to be able to combine everything here. And exit velocity matters too. You got to be able to hit the ball hard. So like there's guys in the system who make a ton of contact better than Pisana maybe even, and they just don't do anything with it because it's weak contact. So this is an easy one. The best combination of everything here. Hit tool, exit velocity, contact, patience. The only thing you can really gripe about from Pisana's offensive game is passivity. And I'll be looking for that this year. I'm very curious to see what his overall swing rate will be this year because so far in spring training when he's gotten in, I think he's taken like 2 swings out of like 3 plate appearances. And one of them was a home run. So that's good. So when he decides to swing, he does good things. It's just he likes to walk a lot. So I will be paying attention to that this year. But yeah, that's the best tool in the entire system for me right now.
I believe last year I actually had the first overall pick. And I think
you
I
did.
led off with Ralphie Velasquez's power. And I'm going to take it here. I'm going to be consistent because to me, it's still the best power in the system. I think there's a lot of players who do a lot of nice things and there's a lot of players who are emerging. But I think I mean, if anything, I feel better about his power grade now than I did a year ago with some of the exit velos and some of the things he did. I think his power is still a standout trait in this system, and I still believe in his power. So I took it first overall a year ago. Honestly, I was joking off air. Like, well, whoever wins is going to take Pisana for like hit tool / I hit the plate. We knew that's where it was going to go. I think whoever lost. I mean, if I had won, would you have come back and taken Velasquez here? Am I right? Like the 1-2 felt like it pretty much had to go this way.
Yeah, I mean, because these are the most two impact tools you're going to have in the system, right? Like these are the ones that stand out, like speed, defense, arm, all that stuff. That's great, but as far as position player prospect wise, these are the most impactful tools. And yeah, Ralphie's definitely there. I think the only question I have with Ralphie is like when I saw him in Lake County last year, he had a really hard time getting his swing around, and there was a lot of like fly balls to left field that he was having a hard time pulling the ball in the air. He was doing that a lot better at Lynchburg, and he didn't seem to find that groove in Lake County. So I would imagine he'll start the year in Lake County again, and we'll work on that. But that's like the only concern I have. But if you're talking about raw power, yeah, he is definitely. I think raw power is a little tick above Chase DeLauter. Like DeLauter's got good raw power too, but if you're talking about just raw power, then Ralphie by far in this system has the most. I mean, there's Rodriguez, and I think Alfonso and Rosario also has a ton of power, but Ralphie's I believe is going to translate better. Is going to be more usable in games. So yeah. For power, before we move on here, power. I'm going to go over to Chase DeLauter. I think this is the obvious follow up here, and DeLauter's power is usable because his swing, as much as we think it's strange looking, um, if you look at the data, like he pulls the ball in the air. The swing does allow him to pull the ball in the air. The question is if he's going to do it against Major League pitching and if he's going to be on the field to do it enough is going to be the question. But like you can even, for as weird as his swing is, like his hit tool is still pretty good if you just base it off of the results and data. Like he still makes a ton of contact. He doesn't strike out. He walks at a good clip. So like all the intangibles are all the tools are there for him to hit and hit for power. We just think the swing is weird, and he may not be able to hit lefties. We don't know, and
You may not
he's
be able
got
to
to,
hit a breaking ball.
yeah, and he's got to stay on the field. But like, yeah, the easy follow up here is DeLauter's power. I would have considered CJ Kafis, but the thing is, like, Kafis doesn't have DeLauter's exit velocities. Angel Hanao has an interesting amount of power for a
I would
guy
have
his
taken
size.
Hanao's power over DeLauter's just because I don't like the swing.
Yeah, it was on my list, but the thing I'm looking at here too is that it's data. Like for all Hanao's power,
He's got good EVs.
he does, but like if you look at the ground ball rate and the pull rate, it's not there. Like those things have to improve. So if you're talking about like who is more likely to hit 25 home runs in a year, it's definitely DeLauter, not Hanau.
No, see, I disagree. I just don't think that swing's going to allow him to get into it once he faces real pitching. But that's where
But I don't think Hanau can do it either because he hits that ball on the ground too much and he's not a pull hitter. Like Hanau to me power wise is more of like a 15 home run 30 double guy because it's a lot of ground balls and it's a lot of not pulled. He can hit the ball into the gap and he's got to improve that, but that's why I wouldn't take it there. I would have taken Kafis behind Bazana, or I'm sorry, DeLauter, only because Kafis gets the ball in the air to his pull side. Like I could see him being a 20 home run hitter in the majors because he does have that swing that's geared forward.
Because that's the one thing really the system for all the positives. Like power is still
not
a question.
A ton of power.
Yeah, it's still
that
is still the thing throughout, and that's why I kind of jumped on Ralphie when I did because he's that guy where I'm like, I feel good that guy's got 30 home run power potential.
He does. He definitely.
I don't know if I would say that about anyone else.
No, I think he's the only. I mean, Rodriguez technically does if you talk about raw power, but Rodriguez also hits a ton of ground balls too. He's also extremely passive himself. And then for those asking, Jenkins Noel graduated from prospect status a year ago, so Jenkins Noel does not count on this list. All right, we're going to talk about speed, defense, arm, and tangibles. We'll talk about who else we considered at some of these, and if this is the best position player prospect group Jeff and I have seen in our time covering the Guardians. All in the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. No better event than a baseball game to me if you want a really wonderful source of protein, wonderful pistachios. If you're looking for a good snack during the baseball game or any sporting event, look for the snack that is both delicious and nutritious. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. So they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats. It helps you keep feeling fuller longer. The no shells variety is perfect. It's good at the ball game, obviously, but it's also good if you need a quick grab and go snack in the car, at your desk. There's no mess. And it's really easy to crack open and just enjoy a good snack on the go. So get snacking, get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, so you just did you had Ralphie's power for speed. This is an interesting one. There are a lot of guys in this system that we can go with.
Well, I haven't actually done my hit tool yet. You've done 2. I've done 1.
Well, you took power first. I thought you were
Yes.
just.
Well, it'd be my
Okay.
turn now, right?
Oh yeah, I just took DeLauter's power. You're right. Okay.
Yes. So it's with me. I'm gonna go back to hit. I don't think you would take this player, but I'm not gonna mess around with it. I think, like, honestly, to me, the player I trust most in terms of like hit, eye, on base, and all that combined is Cooper Ingle.
I knew you were going to go there. I was so sure you were going to go there that I already marked him off on the sheet as you going there. I was so sure that's what you were going to do, because he was my number 2.
I think it very clearly should be. Like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe like I'm not giving someone like Brito enough credit, or some of the like even Kafis would probably be in my top 5 of discussing that. I think he's got a lot of things he does pretty well. He's probably like 5th, but like some people would say Welbin, but like Ingle's done it at the upper levels, and he's just so it's a very. I don't know if he's gonna have power. I don't know if he's gonna be. We talk about like he might be like a 35-40 power. You're hoping type of guy, but like he's just very cognizant. Very cognizant of his zone. Excellent in terms of contact rate. Doesn't chase. Doesn't get outside of his game. Like that's one of those big things that I'm kind of paying more attention to, because I feel like a lot of players who fail at the big league level start to feel that pressure and try to become a different hitter. Like Rocchio last year was a different hitter in the big leagues than he had been in the minors. And I feel like that led to a lot of his struggles. And hopefully he's going to get back to kind of what he was before. And Cooper Ingle so far in the minors has just been himself, and he has never kind of stepped out of that and has done a very good job with that. So I was tempted to sit on this because I didn't think, you're not going to take him for speed. You're not going to take him, but maybe you'd have taken him for intangibles. I don't know. But I was just like, I'm not going to mess around. I'm just going to take the guy who to me is the number 2 kind of like hit, on base, all of that stuff combination.
Yeah, it's an easy pick for that one too. I agree. He does not get out of the zone. He makes contact. It's patience, not passivity. And yeah, he might have limited power, but he also, as we talked to him last year on the show, you can go back and listen to the interview with Cooper Ingle last year we did during the season. He understands like when there's an opportunity to turn on a pitch, like that inside pitch. That's what the Guardians teach these guys who don't have like elite exit velocities and power. It's understanding when you can take your chances on identifying a middle inside fastball and yanking it down the right field line. And Engel talked about the importance of that. So like he also just understands hitting, I think, as well. So I totally agree on Engel. All right, speed. A lot of options you can go speed wise here. I think like there's 2 guys that stand out that are left from this group, because you can't pick 2 players for different tools. It's just one guy.
Jonathan Rodriguez.
Yes, obviously it's Jonathan Rodriguez's speed. Actually, I was going to take Cooper Ingle's speed. You just said I wasn't, but I was truly going to. No, I think Angel Hanao's speed is where I'm going here, because I might be wrong. I bet there's another guy I was thinking of too, but I watched him at Lake County last year, and the guy just glides. Like he is just looks effortless when he runs. I think he's a double plus runner. I think he's got, on the scouting scale, 20 to 80. I think he's like easily a 60, maybe even a 70. I think he glides, and I think he's easily a 20 steal guy.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, because like I'm not sure they have a guy who's a 70. Like it feels like it's all like the best high end run is 60s. So I feel like if that's where you're going, then the only other person for me to take is Churio, right? Like that's the other guy. Like, much like with some of the other players we've talked, like if you're not going to go with one, you're going with the other. And I mean, I guess I could wait, but then there's a slight danger you would take him for defense. So I'm just going to take him for speed and not mess around. So I'm going to just take him for speed, because I think the other thing is defense. And I feel like I don't know who else, like if I look at my list here, it's like, who is my 3rd speed guy? And I'm not sure who I take like for just foot speed. Like I don't know who is my third guy. Maybe Watson, like just in terms of speed, but like
Yeah,
I'd
it's good
rather
speed.
have, I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with the
That's fair.
gentleman Churio that I mentioned.
Yeah. All right, for throwing arm, um, this is a tougher one too because there's not a lot of guys in the system with big arms. This is the only category I think you can go with Jonathan Rodriguez. I think he
Yeah.
very clearly. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's other guys that have good arms. I like Angel Henau's arm even from shortstop.
Yeah.
I think he's got some throwing motion accuracy issues he's got to work on, but the strength is good. But I'm going to go with Rodriguez here. I think Rodriguez, the one thing he contributes defensively is his arm. Nothing else but the arm.
I'm gonna go maybe a little weird, and I'm gonna take Jacob Cozart. Like I think
Throwing
that was
arm?
his. Yeah,
Oh, you went okay.
I feel like his arm behind the plate could play just about anywhere, and I feel like he has one of the better arms in the system. I mean, it's him, or it's like maybe Alfonso Rosario. Doesn't he also have a
It's
big
okay.
strong
Yeah, I
arm?
didn't the video I didn't love it, but yeah.
There's not a lot of great arms in system. Let's be honest. So like, I almost feel like my best approach is to go with the catcher here. And if I'm looking at the arms, like I like Huff's arm, but I think Cozart's is naturally stronger. I think he's the strongest arm that they have of that grouping.
I should have gone with pure defense first because I would have gone with Cozart because I think Cozart is a MLB caliber defender. I think he's going to block.
I think that's why they took
Blocking.
him.
Yeah, I think there's a
He's
lot
a
of actually. I think
low floor guy or high floor
I
guy.
think there's a lot of Austin Hedges and Jacob Cozart. If you think
Yeah.
if you look back to when Austin Hedges was drafted out of high school, he was like the Padres like top prospect, right? He was out of a popular area.
Yeah,
He had
California
power.
kid.
He had power. He had
He ran
a big
well for a
throwing arm.
catcher.
Defense. Ran well for a catcher. I won't be Cozart, but there's a lot of similarities. There were questions. We learned that Austin Hedges can't hit tool wise, but there is power if he ever runs into one. Cozart, I think you hope he can hit a little bit better. He went to college and he hit better, but I think there's a lot of questions. But the power is legitimate in Cozart if he gets into one. But I think the intangibles there, the leadership is there, and I think he's going to frame. We already know he can frame very well. And like you said, the arm is really good. So I would have taken Cozart for defense had I not gone arm. I should have gone Cozart defense first. That was a mistake by me. Just pure defense at this point because you've already taken Churio's speed and I took Henau's speed and you just took Cozart's defense. I'm going to take Petey Halpin's defense. He, to me, is the next best defender on this list. He can play legitimate center field. The throwing arm for Petey Halpin actually is quite good too, so you could easily still consider him as a throwing arm if I know you already made your pick, but defensively, I really like Petey Halpin's ability to play and that's why I think he's on the 40-man roster too, is that he can play all three outfield spots. I think he can fill them well. It's just a matter not if he gets on base enough, and that's an offensive question.
When it comes to defense, we're kind of it's like
slim pickings now.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I'm Yordis Valdez isn't in my top 50. So it's like, it feels cheap. Like, I know he's a good defender. So when I'm looking, and so specifically, I want to look at someone in my top 30. Like, everyone I've taken and mentioned so far is my top 30 guy. So I'm just going to stick with catchers. I'm going to say Cody Huff. Like, he is a complete defender. Like, they went out and got him because he's got a lot of the traits Cozart has. And I think he's a really strong defender. There's so many positives with Cody Huff, like exit velos and defense and arm and everything else. So to me, like Cody Huff was the guy I was kind of looking at defensively, even ahead of Halpin, just because Halpin isn't a top 30 guy for me and Huff is. But like, Halpin is it. The reason he was added, you're 100% right, is his defense. That's why they did that there. So in this situation, I think Cody Huff is a plus defender. I think he is a 60 grade defender, and that's why they went out of their way to add him. So I have three catchers, which just fits up with 2 years ago's prospect draft. I always seem to be catcher heavy, which is funny because I always talk. And I'll say this too, I think the top catcher depth players in this system is as good as it's been in recent years. Like catcher has been a real weak point, and I actually like a lot of the catchers in this system right now, as one can tell with the number of them that I added 3 to my prospect team.
Yeah, and I think Huff threw out something like 33% of runners last year, and he skipped high A. Not that that matters for defense, but yeah, they definitely like Huff, and I think he is also a legitimate defender at the major league level. For
Yeah, I feel
everything
like
else he
like
does.
with Huff and Cozart, one of those guys at least is going to be, your backup catcher of the future. If not,
Mhm.
a world where they, because you got Naylor, so you don't want to say that they're going to be some kind of like combo, but like it just gives you options. Like
They actually
it
have
gives
depth for
you
the first time in forever too.
yes,
Like for a while, we thought about how this team had no catcher depth. Well, now they have Bo. We'll figure it out what he does this year. They
yeah,
love
and
Bo's defense,
Cooper.
by the way. And you got Cooper, and then you got Cozart, and you got Huff, and then you and I are both interested to see what Bennett Thompson does from last
Yeah.
year's draft. So like they actually have catcher depth for the first time in quite some time. All right, before we get out of here, Jeff. Last week I had a question in a mailbag show from someone I thought was interesting. I wanted to run it by you and see your answer. But is this the best position player group of prospects you've ever seen in your time covering the minor league system for this Cleveland team? Because I went back and I was thinking like, all right, you had Lindor and you had Aguilar and you had a couple of guys in that grouping, and then there was like Dorsis Paulino and guys that I really believed in. Right, there was Weglars at one time, like and I think I said Paulino, but you had Kipnis
Yeah.
and coming up, and like Santana was a part of that group. Like you had guys at the system, and there were guys that came up and then that failed. And I went through the whole list, and I was like, wow, these are all guys I was high on that all failed. Like Bobby Bradley was part of the grouping when Lindor was coming up, so we thought Bobby Bradley was a guy that was going to be part of this group, and he wasn't. So and Cord Phelps and Jason Kipnis wars, remember?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm looking at this group and I'm like, all right, Bazana, Engel, Hanau, DeLauter, Kafis, Brito, Churio. I legitimately this might be the best position player group of prospects. This team we even talked about Luis Morejo today, who could have been in the power discussion. And then some people like Welvin Francisco more than I do. I'm not a huge Welvin Francisco guy, but like some people really like him. And then there's some, international guys that people like that we're not really talking about yet. But I don't know. In my time covering the minors, I think this might be the best group that I've seen from the hitters.
It's not for me. And that's not like a knock. It's a good group, but like to me, the 2009 group was probably the best group, which was like Kipnis and Santana and Chisenhall. And that's before Bo Mills kind of imploded. And there were other pieces as well. But I mean, you got Chisenhall was a good major leaguer. Kipnis and Santana were all stars. Like the 2009 group, like my prospect list goes back to 2015. I don't have my old 09 list. I'd have to go look. But like just saying Santana, Kipnis, and Chisenhall, that's a solid grouping. And then, like I said, Brad Mills was Bo was an interesting prospect at that time who had hit well in the minors. Nick Weglars was a big, powerful Canadian kid, though I think he was a little bit before them. I think that was towards the end of Weglars. But there was a lot of interesting players. So it's like, this isn't quite that because of the other thing was like, that grouping, Lou Marson was interesting at the time as a backup catcher. Jason Donald was an interesting. I mean, they got a lot of players in the Lee deal. They traded a lot of, well, actually, I want to make sure I have my timelines on it, but they just kind of stripped down. So they had so many more. This team has probably the second best grouping without having a major sell down beforehand. Like if that grouping hadn't had the sell down, they wouldn't have been as good because that's where you got Santana from. But like in the current state, I prefer that group, but it had the advantage of having just sold, Casey Blake off, sold off other pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't have to make any trades to acquire these guys at all. They're all drafted or yeah, it really is all an international. Like the only guy they traded for here is Brito, right? Everyone else, Huff is in that group, but I don't think we really consider Huff a hitting prospect. But yeah, the only guy they really traded for in this grouping is Brito,
who didn't even make our teams this time.
Yeah, a year ago he was your hit tool guy, so
yep.
And he easily could have been. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I agree. I think there are a lot of cases for other groups, but this is a good one. We didn't really talk about like Khalil Watson was on your team last year, and yeah, I mean Valera made one of mine last year, and I could have taken him for Arm, but yeah, it's a good grouping. All right, let us know what you think of the guys tools that we evaluated today, and I think we had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun. Friday's episode, I've been kind of teasing this for a while. We've been just kind of putting it off just because of timing and doing other stuff. But I did a crossover episode with Sully of Locked On MLB. We talked about the Guardians off season, hopes for 2025, the AL Central. So Sully will give you kind of the 1,000-foot view of the Guardians off season and the AL Central, and we'll react to that, and you'll have that to kind of go on some more outside perspective on the team. I think is good. Next week, so I'm headed to Arizona. By the time you're listening to this, I could be on a plane to Arizona. Who knows? I'll touch down there very late on Thursday night. So wish me a safe flight there. I'll have some videos for you down there from whatever I do, and then I don't know if I'll be back on Monday with Jeff or not. We'll see how I'm doing down there. But I will say next week we'll have more position previews. We'll talk about the weekend of camp. We will definitely be talking. I think we're going to talk to our friends in Detroit. We're going to talk about the Tigers next week. I think we're going to do a little bit of a division crossover and kind of get the evaluation on what the Tigers' danger might pose to the Guardians this year and how those two teams will stack up.
And I just want to throw this out there. We get such mixed messages on if people want crossovers. If you want more crossovers, make sure you watch the crossover episodes, because anytime we interview, they seem too much like history, die like a dog. So, yeah, make sure you, if that's what you want, you're tuning in.
Yeah, we'll catch those on next week. In the meantime, subscribe, review, sign to be a Locked On Guardians Insider. You can do that in the show description. That is subtext. Join subtext.com/LockedOnGuardians and hang out with us over there. And I'll be giving you some stuff in there from Arizona while I'm down there. So if you want to become an insider, great time, as I'll be in Arizona for a lot of stuff there. And as always, email the show at loguardianshow@gmail.com. Thanks to Rodney for his email. Appreciate that. And Jeff.
Again, thank you all for joining us. It's an incredible thrill to hit 4K. Thank you all. Thank you to all of our everydayers, and go Guardians, go.